March 27, 1977, dawned like any other Sunday. On the surface, it seemed like a normal day at Los Rodeos Airport, now Tenerife North Airport, on the island of Tenerife, one of Spain's Canary Islands. But beneath the veneer of normalcy, a series of events was already in motion. These events would culminate in the deadliest aviation disaster in history. Tenerife North Airport was an unexpected hub of activity that day. A bomb threat at Gran Canaria Airport, another island airport, forced numerous flights to divert to Tenerife. This unexpected influx of air traffic strained the small airport's resources and personnel. The usually quiet runways were now crowded with aircraft, their crews and passengers anxious to resume their journeys. Adding to the tension was the weather. A thick fog had descended upon the airport, significantly reducing visibility. The fog was so dense that pilots struggled to see the runway and taxiways, their outlines blurred and indistinct. This dangerous combination of factors, a congested airport, impatient travelers, and blinding fog, set the stage for a tragedy. The bomb threat at Gran Canaria Airport had a ripple effect throughout the region's air traffic. Flights destined for the popular tourist destination were forced to make a detour, landing instead at the smaller, less equipped Tenerife North Airport. Among the diverted flights were two Boeing 747 jumbo jets, each carrying hundreds of passengers eager to reach their destinations. The diversion to Tenerife meant delays, and delays bred impatience and frustration. Passengers, confined to the cramped cabins of the aircraft, grew restless. Crews, eager to get back on schedule, felt the pressure mounting. The atmosphere at Tenerife North Airport crackled with tension. The airport itself, ill-equipped to handle such a large volume of traffic, struggled to cope. Runways and taxiways were overcrowded, and communication between pilots and air traffic control became strained. The fog, growing thicker by the minute, only exacerbated the situation, shrouding the airport in an eerie silence broken only by the roar of jet engines. Two of the diverted flights, KLM Flight 4805 and Pan Am Flight 1736, would become forever linked in aviation history. These two flights, both operating Boeing 747s, were diverted to Tenerife North Airport due to a terrorist incident at their original destination. The KLM flight, originating in Amsterdam, was carrying 234 passengers and 14 crew members. The passengers were a mix of tourists, business travelers, and families, all eager to reach their final destinations. At the helm was Captain Jacob Veldhuizen van Zanten, a highly experienced pilot and KLM's chief flight instructor. Known for his meticulous attention to detail and calm demeanor, Captain Van Zanten was a respected figure in the aviation community. Pan Am Flight 1736, en route from Los Angeles with a stopover in New York, had 380 passengers and 14 crew members on board. The passengers included a diverse group of individuals, from vacationers to business executives. Captain Victor Grubbs, a veteran pilot with thousands of hours of flight time, commanded the Pan Am flight. His extensive experience and steady hand made him a trusted leader among his crew and passengers. Both aircraft and their crews were highly regarded within the aviation industry, their reputations built on years of experience and professionalism. The KLM and Pan Am crews were known for their dedication to safety and their ability to handle even the most challenging situations. The two Boeing 747s, each a symbol of modern aviation, found themselves parked on the crowded tarmac at Tenerife North Airport, their passengers oblivious to the impending disaster. The airport, not typically equipped to handle such large aircraft, was bustling with activity as ground crews worked to accommodate the unexpected influx of flights. The fog, now so thick it was impossible to see more than a few feet ahead, had brought all flights to a standstill. The dense fog created a surreal and disorienting atmosphere, making communication and navigation extremely challenging for both ground and air crews. The airport, shrouded in an eerie silence, felt like a powder keg waiting to explode. The tension was palpable as everyone waited for the fog to lift, unaware that the stage was being set for one of the most tragic events in aviation history. Section 4. Whispers in the Fog, the Perils of Miscommunication. As the fog lingered, tensions continued to rise at Tenerife North Airport. The combination of limited visibility, overcrowded runways, and hurried communications created a perfect storm for disaster. Misunderstandings and misinterpretations of instructions between the pilots and air traffic control became tragically commonplace. Adding to the confusion was the use of multiple languages in radio communications. While English was the official language of aviation, Spanish was also used between the pilots and the Spanish air traffic controllers. This linguistic mix, coupled with static and interference on the radio frequencies, further hampered clear and concise communication. The pilots of KLM 4805 and Pan Am 1736, anxious to get their passengers to their destinations, grew increasingly impatient with the delays. The fog showed no signs of lifting, and the pressure to make up for lost time weighed heavily on their minds. In this environment of stress and uncertainty, even small miscommunications could have disastrous consequences. Section 5. The Tenerife Airport Disaster, Seconds to Tragedy. This tragic event remains one of the deadliest aviation disasters in history, a stark reminder of how quickly things can go wrong. The fog began to lift slightly, offering a glimmer of hope. Visibility was still poor, but there was a sense that operations could continue safely. Air traffic control cleared KLM 4805 and Pan Am 1736 to prepare for takeoff, instructing the KLM flight to taxi down the runway and the Pan Am flight to follow behind and exit at a designated taxiway. The instructions seemed clear, but the dense fog made communication and navigation challenging. However, a series of tragic miscommunications and misunderstandings unfolded. The language barrier and radio interference added to the confusion, creating a perfect storm of errors. The KLM crew, believing they had received takeoff clearance, began their takeoff roll without being aware that Pan Am 1736 was still on the runway. The urgency in their actions was palpable, driven by a desire to stay on schedule. The Pan Am crew, meanwhile, missed their designated turnoff in the dense fog, continuing down the runway instead of exiting as instructed. The thick mist obscured their view, making it nearly impossible to see the taxiway signs. By the time the two aircraft spotted each other through the fog, it was too late. The realization of the impending collision dawned on both crews in a split second, but there was no time to react. The KLM pilots desperately attempted to lift their aircraft, the engines screaming as they strained to gain altitude. The sheer weight of the fully loaded 747 made this an almost impossible task. But it was a futile effort. The aircraft, heavy with fuel and passengers, could not achieve the necessary lift in time. The KLM 747, still traveling at high speed, slammed into the side of the Pan Am aircraft with a deafening roar. The impact was catastrophic, tearing through the fuselage and igniting a massive fireball. The impact, witnessed by horrified onlookers, sent shockwaves through the airport and beyond. Emergency responders rushed to the scene, but the scale of the disaster was overwhelming. The tragedy left an indelible mark on aviation history, leading to significant changes in safety protocols and communication procedures. Section 6. In the wake of unthinkable loss. The collision of KLM Flight 4805 and Pan Am Flight 1736 resulted in an inferno, instantly claiming the lives of everyone aboard the KLM aircraft. The impact was so severe that it left no chance for survival, and most of the passengers and crew on the Pan Am flight. The few who survived were left with life-altering injuries and trauma. A total of 583 people perished in the disaster, making it the deadliest accident in aviation history. The sheer scale of the loss was incomprehensible. The scale of the tragedy sent shockwaves around the world. News outlets scrambled to cover the story, and the world watched in horror as details emerged. News of the disaster spread like wildfire, leaving people in disbelief and mourning. Families and friends of the victims were plunged into a state of shock and grief. Families and friends of the victims struggled to comprehend the enormity of the loss, grappling with the sudden and tragic end of their loved ones' lives. While investigators raced to understand what went wrong on that fateful Sunday afternoon, the investigation was complex and required meticulous attention to detail. The Tenerife airport disaster served as a stark reminder of the inherent risks associated with air travel. It underscored the need for constant vigilance and improvement in safety protocols. It also highlighted the critical importance of clear communication, unambiguous procedures, and a shared understanding between pilots and air traffic control. Miscommunication can have catastrophic consequences, and a shared understanding between pilots and air traffic control. The disaster emphasized the need for rigorous training and adherence to protocols. In the aftermath of the tragedy, the aviation industry faced a reckoning, a need to confront its vulnerabilities and implement measures to prevent such a disaster from ever happening again. The lessons learned from this tragedy have shaped modern aviation safety standards, a need to confront its vulnerabilities and implement measures to prevent such a disaster from ever happening again. The changes made in response to this disaster have undoubtedly saved countless lives since.